Well, good morning. It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood. Won't you be my neighbor? So, and Louis has made the decision to uproot himself from the womb of Amherst and plunk himself down in Center City, Minnesota. He arrives in late January and it's a frozen tundra. He's kind of like amazed that he would end up in this place. But remember, he's developed a very high level of trust in the guidance that I, as Sun King, am offering him. He doesn't see it yet as Sun King. At the time, he's still using the language of Holy Spirit or Jesus via his immersion into A Course in Miracles. So as soon as he gets established in his little motel room in Center City, just actually in Lindstrom, a few miles down the road from Center City, where Hazelden has its very large complex, biggest healing center in the world. Louis puts up a couple notices to right away get A Course in Miracles group started. There are several, quite a few staff members that were very interested. I remember a woman running the bookstore there, woman running the front desk, an acquisition editor from the publishing company. Yeah, there was a nice group, probably 5 or 6 regulars that would gather weekly to study together A Course in Miracles. And early February, Louis began the program, and whatever, long story short, there were big problems. Louis doesn't fit into an institution so well. The woman running the program, her name is Dorothy, she took an instant dislike to Louis because she had asked him while he was a student of hers there in the CD counselor training program, it would be better if he didn't teach a class on his own. You know, she thought facilitating A Course in Miracles group was teaching a class. And, Louis said to her, well, Course in Miracles is like my church. Would you ask me not to go to church each Sunday? And that put Dorothy off, of course. So she took the first opportunity she could to sit Louis down. I guess after the first quarter of the year training, there was an assessment, and they'd used the MMPI, Minnesota Multiphasic Personality Inventory, as one of the assessment tools. And so Dorothy used that test, the results of the MMPI, to tell Louis, it appears to me you're just a square peg trying to fit into a round hole. I don't see it working. So I'm going to terminate your training program. So once again, Louis put to the test. He's walking down. It was a beautiful spring day. I think it was May, middle of May. A beautiful spring day. Louis had 10 days to move out of his room in this converted motel. And, the first reaction, of course, is very tribal, human. Louis crying like, oh my God, here I am in the middle of nowhere, the heartland of the USA, Minnesota, and I'm being kicked out. So remember, at the soul level, one of Louis' big soul questions was, do I have a home here? He didn't feel at home with his family. He didn't feel at home in the Air Force Academy. For the first time, he felt at home. He spent 10 years, wandering after the meeting with Rena, receiving his destiny. But he had never felt at home in the world, and here he was in Minnesota, far away from Connecticut, Massachusetts, far away from California, in the middle of what appeared to be nowhere. And yet what was starting to grow in Louis because of his teaching, training, was this idea, kind of a new idea that like home is with me wherever I go, like beginning to feel a sense of home in himself, in his relationship with the divine. And so it occurred to him that it didn't really matter exactly where he was on the face of planet Earth. So he decided he was going to stay. He didn't really know how, but at the very next meeting of the Course in Miracles group, one of the members, Betsy, I believe her name was, and the acquisition editor for Hazelden said, you know, Louis, I've got a project. I feel very confident that the publishing higher ups will accept it. Again, that's her job, is to find projects, acquisition editor. So she said, I'm going to pitch to them this idea that you write a book or a booklet series, whichever form seems better, on your integration of A Course in Miracles and the 12 steps. I think they would find that very interesting, very publishable, being that A Course in Miracles was becoming, growing in popularity. And of course, the 12 steps were very popular. So here are two spiritual paths, disciplines that could be integrated. And Louis was the guy to do it, according to Betsy. So she pitched the idea right away. They gave a green light, even offered a small advance, which helped Louis secure an apartment and settle down in St. Croix Falls, Wisconsin, probably about 8-10 miles from Hazelden Center City. And Louis could easily go back and forth on his bicycle, which was his mode of transport, had been for the past 3.5 years. So this process began. Louis hunkered down and began writing. He spent time on his bike each day riding through Interstate Park, a beautiful park, the gorge, the river, St. Croix River running through there. It was really quite beautiful. And yeah, Louis felt pretty uplifted, well into his project, his daily routine. Still met with his Course in Miracles group, of course. That was a good anchor for him. And then the phone call came, July 4th, early in the morning. Phone rings and Louis like, ooh, like must have been like 6 a.m. or something. Oh, wow. Like it must be my mom. Who else would call at 6 a.m. on July 4th? And it was Louis's mother. She was crying and said to Louis, your sister Lynn, she hanged herself the day before. She wasn't fully dead. She was in a coma. They cut her down before she was fully dead, just mostly dead. I think her brain suffered severe injury. So she was in a coma on life support. And as Louis's mother's telling him this, the voice, my voice, said to him, pay attention. Okay, so here was the first opportunity for Louis to put this radical teaching, rebirthing of the past 3 years. This was the first time to really put this to the test. Pay attention. Okay, this is the key to everything. I want you to hear this, that being able and willing to hear the voice and respond is key, is everything to your new earth, is everything to your evolution into Homo spiritus, Homo globulus. Is you have a relationship with this voice built on trust. Okay, so here's the first opportunity. Louis is not yet 38. Pay attention. Okay, so Louis had said with his mom, he'd talked with his sister Jody, who was in Seattle, the professor. Maybe they could coordinate their flight, and the 3 children would join with the mom and sit in vigil with our younger sister, Lynn. So shortly after that, Louie's on the phone with Jody in Seattle, and she asks him this very bizarre question: would you consider not coming home? And she went on to explain how she'd always felt like the invisible one, the one that never really sort of had any power in the family. Certainly she was having a great career and a good life and all that, but in the family she felt powerless. And she knew if Louis came back, that he would assume the power that he'd always had in relationship with his mother, being always her like best friend and therapist, counselor, or whatever. So she said, would you consider not coming home? Let me have an opportunity to participate. And of course, because the voice, my voice, had said to him, pay attention, it was clear that he would say, okay, Jody, I will not come home. And later explained to his mom why, and that was all okay, that Jody and Sandy would sit in vigil with our mother, his mother, with his little sister, Lynn. And so kept up his daily routine, did his writing. He rode his bike in the park. And I remember his experience riding through the park, because, remember, I'm giving him this big hug through this whole process. And he's feeling the sweetness in him. He's feeling the sweetness flowing through him in the form of his tears. He's become in his early recovery a big crybaby, crying all the time, which is a beautiful thing. Letting the feelings flow, feeling so sad for Lynn, but her sadness is his sadness. They grew up as the two younger. They were quite bonded. So sad for basically the tragedy of her life, that things had never really worked out in the world for her. And he just allowed the grief to flow. And after a few days of this, I want to mention one more thing. There was a favorite movie of Louis's, Chariots of Fire, that he had, I guess back then it was tape. I guess you'd call it a cassette tape of a film. And anyway, movies were a big thing for Louis. So anyway, in this movie, there's a beautiful scene where the main character, the runner, he has a role as a missionary, but he also has this talent as a runner. And his younger sister, Jenny, she'd never really understood why, like, you should be devoting all of your attention to the missionary, not becoming like a famous person, a runner. He's in the Olympics. And he says to her one day that, Jenny, how much I love God, and I love my service to God as a missionary. But I feel God's favor that, God gave me this devotion, but he also made me fast. And when I run, I feel God's pleasure. So the great scenes of him, running. And he always had this crazy look on his face and threw his head back. And anyway, so Jenny didn't approve. She didn't understand. And, he didn't expect her to come to see him run in the Olympics in Paris. But it turns out in this big race where he wins the gold medal, they don't show it until later, but after the race, he's looking up in the crowd and sees his best friend and his brother, and they're cheering. And the brother points to his left, the camera pans over, and there's the sister, Jenny. And she's so happy for her brother. I think she finally understands that he could be a missionary and he could be a great runner, that this was all part of, serving God's will.